Hi to everyone. This is Anton Roeger with APC Data Analytics. Thanks for joining us today on the webinar. And there is on your screen there, you should have a Q&A box or a chat box if you need to ask any questions along the way. Just wanted to share with you, I've been in real estate for 20 years here in Charleston, South Carolina. But about 3.5 years ago, we developed a pricing tool. 30 agents in my office and myself developed a pricing tool for agents to use that's visual and interactive and uses your MLS data. So what we're going to go through today is an example of an agent pricing a house using the software. So every agent has their own login. So as you can see here, we're on the home page here, and we're operating out of the Charleston Regional MLS. So this has a list of all our MLSs here. But right now, as an agent, you're only allowed to use your MLS. So right now, I'm on the Charleston Regional MLS. So every agent can create their own client database. So their client database can be buyers or sellers. Very simple to use. So let's just add a client and call her Analytics. So you're just going to add a client's name, number, information on here, and an email address. And the email address is important, so when you send them a report, it can just send it to their specific, your client's email address. So I've already entered that in once, but you can look at your list of clients. So here's a list of clients here. You can also look at properties. So you can have your property list here. So here's some different properties that we've been running. So you can look at a list of properties here, or you can create a new property. The new property can be for, again, a buyer client or a seller client. All my old historical charts are located right here, but what we're going to spend most of today on is running a new chart. So under new chart, from the home page, so an agent, when they go to new chart, what it's going to display for them is two options. So most of today, we're going to do this property value analysis. We've just rolled out a new product for investment analysis, which I'll share a brief teaser at the end, but today we're going to do a property value analysis. So as an agent, when I click on that, what it's taking me to is a search page and identifying the subject property. So at the top here, you can see we're working in the Charleston Regional MLS, and I have two choices for picking the subject property. I can select one that I've put under property previously, or I can just do a quick search, and all I need to do is title, the address of the property, and a square footage. We're going to use, for this example, one of the properties I've run before, and let's just say it's 456 Main Street. And again, when you add that property information, you're just doing simple stuff. You can put a picture in for display purposes, the square footage, property address, but we're going to just evaluate this property at 456 Main Street. So the agent's role is to pick the most relevant comps in their MLS. And what we've provided on the left here is a set of criteria that they can search for those comps. Every MLS will be a little bit different depending on what that area regional normal search criteria is. So for here, let's say this property at 456 Main Street, let's say it's a single family detached. So it knows from a standpoint of when I come to here, I can choose my property type. So it's a residential property. Let's choose single family detached. And then I can come down to year build. Well, let's say all these houses in this neighborhood are built within a recent time frame, a compact time frame on their year build. Maybe I don't need to use that as a sort criteria. If I have a historic house, maybe I want to stick to historic properties or a newer construction. All these fields are optional. So for this specific search, I'm going to leave year built blank. So on subdivision, any subdivision in your MLS will be pre-populated here. So if I start typing in the subdivision of this specific house at 456 Main Street, I come up with Bell Hall. So on Bell Hall, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that search to the criteria. So if I come to the criteria, I can add Bell Hall. If I have other neighborhoods, I can add multiple neighborhoods like Carolina Park. So you can see you can do multiple neighborhoods or subdivisions within the same area. For this search, I'm going to go back down and just say, okay, let's just focus on one area in Carolina Park. Price range. So again, this is an optional criteria here. I can include the price range or leave it blank. For this example, I'm going to show you what happens when I leave this blank. But if you have $2 million properties and you know your house is, in that $350,000 range, you certainly don't want to include that wide of a range. But I can show you how you can narrow down by using other criteria. Square footage. So on the square footage range, again, I'm going to leave this blank to show you how wide open the search can be. Zip code. Zip code would come into play. Let's say there's not a subdivision or your MLS does not have subdivisions. Then you could put in the zip code and do a more traditional map search with your MLS data. So when I come down to the last field down here is date range. So by default, we default to 1 year of search criteria, but I can narrow this down. So let's say I only want to go back to 6 months. So I can come back here and say, okay, well, 6 months from May 13th, let's go back to November 13th of last year. So now I've put in a set of search criteria here, and just, I can even add or subtract later of what I want to do. So here is all the search I'm going to do. So we're evaluating this property at 456 Main Street. It's a residential search, single family detached. Let's just narrow the year built down to 2012 to 2016. Let's say the house was built in 2014. This is the neighborhood that we're searching. We have a price range, square footage, zip code, and finally the date range. So as an agent in your MLS, your role is to select the most relevant search criteria out of these that are available within the APC software. Once you select the search and you select these fields, what the system is doing is it's updating within an hour of every change in MLS. So if there's a new listing that comes on at 9 o'clock in the morning, by 10 o'clock, by 10 o'clock that morning, it should show up in the system as an active listing. If there's one that goes from pending to closed in the MLS, it should activate, as a closed sale in the system. So it's continually updating. If you go look at your historical charts, it's a moment of time when you hit the search, but you can continually update that data. And you'll see some of the other MLSs, like if you're in South Florida, we have some other fields on here that might include, from a standpoint of waterfront, yes, no. It might be, pool, yes, no. It could be 55 and over neighborhood, yes, no. So there's some different search criteria fields that come involved that you can more narrow down the range. We do also have one MLS that we're integrated into the platform that you actually search within the MLS, and you can do any search field. Let's see here. So I'm just going to, sorry, I think my internet cut out, so I'm just going to run this again right here. So 456 single family, 2012, 2016, Carolina Park. We'll do November 13th. And then search. There we go. So we had an internet problem here. So now we're down to, we have 16 active results, 4 pending, 21 closed. So what will populate, it will show everything on here for active, pending, and closed with my search criteria. Now, as an agent within this neighborhood, I know this is a main road coming into the neighborhood here. These are a different set of comps than these comps. And let's say my subject property is in this area here, I can simply use a map tool. So on my map tool, I can map around this specific area. And now I show 28 total results. So I have 8 active, 4 pending, and 16 closed sales. The minimum requirement for closed sales is 7. So I have 16 here to do this analysis. Now, we purposely created the program. If you only have 1 comp for the area or 2 comps for the area, there's just not enough data to really do much analytics on it if you only have 1 or 2 closed sales. So if you end up with a set of data that might have 5 or 6, and you can go back in time further and pick up some more comps to get to that minimum requirement of 7. So if these are the comps that I want to run my analysis on for my subject property, I simply hit Generate Chart. When I hit Generate Chart, what it's going to produce for me, it's going to produce an output of, you can see right here, it's price versus square footage. So this is the output every time you run a chart. The blue house is the subject property we're evaluating, and you can see it's 2,670 square feet for 456 Main Street. And the price that you see on here of estimated value that shows 531. So 531,000 is what we're predicting to be the average price for a house that's 2,670 square feet in this neighborhood. The reds are the closed sales, the yellows are the under contracts, and the greens are the actives. So for a minute, let's hide. You can hide the pendings or under contracts and the actives. So let's hide all those for a moment. So if I hide those, this is where the focus needs to be for your seller and for your buyer. So the blue house being the subject property, this blue curve here represents the average price of the home at a specific square footage. So we are getting completely away from talking about average price per square foot, because an average price per square foot is not the mathematically correct way to analyze house value. It's at a specific square footage, what is the average price? Because we know the smaller houses sell for more per square foot, the larger ones sell for less average per square foot. So this curve represents any square foot, what is the average price? So the average price of the house at 2,670 square feet is 531,000. These darker blue bands that you see here, so this first blue band represent, we want agents to call them pricing bands. So most of the home sales are going to be within this first pricing band here, and you can see most of them are within that price band or very close to it, except this one's a little high and a couple that are a little low. What this represents is a majority of the sales mathematically will fall right within here. If you're closing a house up in this area, it's a superior home. If you're closing a house down in this area, there might be some issues with site, layout, quality, condition. There's some issues that are rating the buyers got a lower price because there were some issues with those items on adjustments. And what we're doing is any one of these comps, the agent can show to their client pictures of the house. So if this is my subject property, well, you can show the other houses on here. And any picture that's within your MLS, provided the pictures, you can scroll through any of them in here, and you can see the finish of the house, the features of the house. So anything's available with the data here below. So if I look at consumer demand, so this is consumer demand for real estate in Carolina Park, which is our search subdivision, in this 6-month time frame. So this represents consumer demand for real estate. If I populate with the pendings, so let's show the pendings on here. So I see 4 pendings, 1, 2, 3, and this 4th one. So 3 are within the bands. This one's a little high, but when I start scrolling through this, I realize this is a 1-story house, which is hard to find in this area, and has a really superior backyard. So when you go through it, and it's got a pond out front, when you go through it, you realize that this house is a superior home. Now, the under contracts don't reflect how much was negotiated off the price for that contract. So this house very well might fall into this range here when the closing happens. Now, we are not using these under contracts in the math because we do not know what they're closing for yet. Same thing with the actives. So if I populate the actives, so this represents all the active sales. So we have 8 actives, 1, 2, and then there's a cluster of 6 all up in here. So what this is also representing is that you can see visually, you can show to your seller that the one that's the lowest price in this larger square footage that's actually right on the curve is under contract, or these other 6 are all still active. You know, and here's 2 under contract here, we know about this one, and then these 2 are within the range as well. So it's a visual way to show to your clients, well, why are these priced up here? You know, from a standpoint, are they justified to be up in this price range here? Traditionally, what happens is if you're up in this range here and you truly are worth that, you're not using the right set of comps. But these are all very similar age built, same subdivision. So it's very representative of the data that buyers are willing to pay up to this level for a very nice house. Sellers might have to sell down here if they have some challenges with the house on features and finishes. So this blue house that's the subject property has 2,670 square feet. I can come down here and show you the range of value for that house. So remember we said the midpoint was 531. Here's a range of value for that specific square footage home. Well, as we were discussing earlier, we know not every house is average. So if I come down here, I have site, layout, condition, and quality. So these 4 adjustments are what agents can make. We're also getting away from agents having the ability to adjust value on a numerical, let's say it's a 2-car garage versus a 1-car garage. Is that worth $5,000, $8,000, $10,000? Nobody really knows. There's so much background analytics that have to happen to that. What we want the agents to do is simply, when they first run the chart, it's coming back as a average rating, 3 stars across the board. And everybody's used to looking at star ratings. So what we want the agent is, think about the site of this subject property. Let's say this subject property that we're evaluating, let's say it's on a cul-de-sac and it has a nice big private wooded lot. And you feel that the buyer would have an above average rating for the site, meaning, oh, this is a really nice yard compared to the competition, and it's one of the best lots in the neighborhood. Well, you can rate it that way. So I can come down here to the site and I can rate it as 5 stars. So if I change this rating saying a consumer would think this is one of the best lots in the neighborhood, I can simply change that rating. We're visually changing where it is placed on the chart, and we're also mathematically changing the market value. Layout. So layout, and all the information is contained on here for each one of these adjustments. But layout would be, oh, well, it's an open floor plan with the master down. It has a 2-car garage and a screened porch. What are the positive and negatives for layout? Would a buyer find it to be an above average layout, below average layout? Average. So condition. So make sure on condition you're considering, okay, how old is the roof? How old is the HVAC? Is it well maintained? What maintenance items are either upkept or need to be addressed, before or after closing? Because this will change the value of the house based off the condition. Quality as well. So quality is the finish level of the house. Does it have hardwood floors and granite countertops and stainless appliances? And all the rest do? Well, then it's average. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's always compared to the competition. Are you better or worse or average? And this is the best way to rate it. And what happens is it keeps you within this range of consumer demand. So changing these ratings, it keeps me within this window. So I can't price the house outside of this band, either on the high side or the low side. But most houses have either some positive and some negative characteristics for the adjustments. Now, again, if you let your seller rate it, they might rate their house a 5-star, 5, 5, 5. So we gave the agent the ability to hide this. When they're doing a presentation, if they're doing it live, they don't necessarily have to show the ratings to their client. The next analysis that we're doing is on seasonality. So I'm running this chart for the first time today, May 13th. So it shows on May 13th is when we're doing this analysis. For the subject property, we are analyzing all these close dates. So if I come look at this house here, this one closed on December 19th. So what we're doing on the analytics tab is we are looking at all 16 of the closed comps, and we're making a seasonality adjustment higher or lower based off the date that we ran the chart and compared to those 16 closed comps. So what we're doing is we are giving a positive adjustment of almost $7,500 above the average line for this subject property compared to the 16 closed comps based off of this seasonality date. So now an agent also has the ability to change the seasonality date. So let's say you go on the listing appointment today and they say, well, thanks for stopping by, but we really don't want to list the house until end of the year. Maybe they have a job relocation coming up. So that as an agent, you can simply come down here and you can change the date on the chart. So if I go change the date and let's say, let's list it December 19th, I can simply come here, change the date on the chart. And when I go back to the analytics tab, now look, it's actually a seasonality adjustment down because that date of December 19th compared to the date range of the sold properties is actually a negative adjustment for those 16 closed comps. So we are looking at the seasonality trend specific to your MLS. So we know the seasonality in Miami will look different than the seasonality in Buffalo, will look different than Charleston. So what we're doing is each MLS has its own seasonality characteristic. So just for our demo today, I'm going to go change it back to today's date, May 13th. So what we're also doing on the Analytics tab is not only we're making a seasonality adjustment, but we're also making a market conditions adjustment. So market conditions adjustment is more the longer term trend of the market. So is the market going up in value for these houses or down in value, going sideways? Well, the best way to look at that is that we're looking at market conditions, months of inventory. So remember, we have 16 closed comps that we're analyzing. We closed those in the last 6 months. So we're running right around 2.5 months, 2.5 sales per month. We have 8 for sale with 4 under contract. That's equivalent to 3 months of inventory. So we know if we didn't list another property, we would be out of inventory in 3 months. So traditionally, that break point between a buyer's and seller's market is 6 months of inventory. So at 3 months of inventory, we are a seller's market. So a seller's market for this specific set of data reflects that house prices are still going up historically based off of this supply and demand. And I understand there's a lot of influences that affect real estate, whether it's interest rates and job growth and the situation we're in right now with COVID. All this comes into play, but it's all factored into supply and demand. How many houses are you trying to sell to how many buyers are out there on a regular basis? So this market is still an appreciating market over time based off those comps. So this same house that closed on December 19th, we believe would sell for more today based off of market conditions. So we're making that positive adjustment on this subject property of $2,400 based off of this analysis of those 16 closed comps. So again, this is all done for you. You just need to be able to explain, we're making an adjustment for seasonality. When your seller says, hey, we're in the spring market, it's really hot, I understand that, and we've adjusted for that value. Well, this market is still going up in value. I understand we've made that adjustment in market conditions. The property adjustment value that you see here is from the first page when we made the property adjustments for site, layout, condition, and quality. So by rating the site higher, we're giving a credit to the subject property of $12,840 because it has one of the nicest lots in the neighborhood. Now, at the same time, here's our estimated market value. So our estimated market value is showing 540, almost 541 to 547. So this is the market value that you see on the chart page, but then we're also giving a suggested list price. So we know if this is our market value and this is our sales price to list price, we can list in this range here to achieve this market value here. So what we're doing is we're doing the analysis for the agent to keep the seller in a realistic price range. So a lot of times the seller might be, okay, I'm fine selling between 540 and 547, but let's list at 575 and see what happens. Well, for that reason, we created this probability of sale. So what we wanted to demonstrate for the agent and for the seller or buyer client is that if you list at 575, you have a very low probability of selling with a very long days on market. So you might be on the market this long and you're just going to find out you're not going to sell in the end. So let's stay at a realistic price range and give ourselves a high probability of selling. So a lot of times what the seller thinks, if they list at a higher price, it just takes longer to sell. Reality is if they list at too high of a price, they will never sell. So this here is to keep the seller in a realistic price range compared to where the market value is. Days on market. So on the days on market, we're also talking about this differently. We are not averaging days on market together. The average days on market together is what we want to focus on is days on market from the final list price. So DOMX reflects days on market from the final correct list price. So these 16 comps, when they hit their final list price, they average 27 days on the market. So 27 is the realistic time frame that it takes to sell a house in this neighborhood. So the conversation with the seller is that if this is your market value and we list in this range here, on average it will take us 27 days to get a contract. If you go past that time frame, we might need to consider lowering the price and giving ourselves a better probability of selling. Now, again, looking at average days on market, the reason why that's not the correct way to analyze, let's say one of these houses was listed for 200 days. And after 200 days, they had made their fourth price change. And then after that fourth price change, let's say they sold in 21 days, the only number you should care about is the 21. The 200 number is bad data. That's an example. The 200 days represents a house that did not sell. Why do we want to use that in our data? We don't. We only want to use the data that shows a house that did sell. So these 27 days represent, on average, is 27 days on the market for a house to sell once it's at the right price. And again, here's our sales price to list price, and then price per square foot. Now, keep in mind, we are not averaging price per square foot. What we're doing is the $204 a square foot that you see represented here, that is for a house that is the subject property that's 2,670 square feet. So at 2,670 square feet, that's the price per square foot. I can go down here and analyze this house right here, that's 1,895 square feet. So I can come down and change my square footage, the 1,895, update the chart, same set of comps, everything else is the same, and now I'm analyzing this house down here. Well, this house will sell for $240 a square foot. So this is why it's so critical not to average price per square foot, because all that matters is this curve here represents the price at a specific square footage. So, so this is helping the agent analyze any house on this chart. If I go finish my analytics tab, that's the last feature on here, is the price per square foot for that specific square footage. We also have the map tool. So on the map tool, everything's geo-coordinated. So I can come onto any one of these and, you can scroll over, you can look at the pictures on these, you can look at anything that's available on the chart format. We also have a list format. So in the list format, we have the actives, the pending house sales, and the closed house sales. And again, while we're on this chart, I just wanted to give you an example why price per square foot is not the correct way, is that if you look down this list here, there's some houses at $180 a square foot and some at $217. Here's one at $170, $166, $217. So you can see, talking about an average price per square foot, there's such a massive range because you have different square footage houses. So all that matters, again, is that analysis on the chart. We also came up with the notes tab. And again, this is all developed by agents and for the agents. So this notes tab are scripts for the agent. So everything I'm discussing today is summarized here for this specific chart. So here was our search criteria that we used. And now it shows to us, you want to talk about seasonality with your client? So here's the seasonality adjustment, and this is why we made the adjustment. Here's market conditions. Here's our price per square foot discussion. Days on market. So here, they're all scripts for agents. So the subject property should be on the market an average of 27 days on market at the correct list price prior to a ratified contract. If the number of days a property is for sale extends beyond, the seller may need to lower the price or address the common feedback complaints of previous showings. So these are all scripted for that agent to have a conversation with their buyer or seller. And then we also have the report format. So report format, I uploaded a picture of my house, maybe have a picture of the agent, their logo, everything on here in a format that you can print out as a PDF, or you can email it as well. So everything is summarized, and it's only 6 or 7 pages long. It's not 70 or 80 pages. So it's summarizing everything for the agent to make a presentation. However, you can also email this chart. When you email the chart, it's fully interactive for the client. They can scroll over any of the pictures, any of the charts, the tabs, so they can do anything they want, within here. However, they can't change anything. They can't remove any of the comps. They can't change the ratings. They can't change the dates. It's all a read-only format to them. So once you have your analysis complete, you can simply email it to your clients. You also have the ability, let's say this house here was a foreclosure, you also have the ability to delete it from the list. So if you delete it from the chart and list, it's going to recalculate everything with that data point missing, and we would go down to 15 closed sales. So everything is navigable, that you can quickly analyze the set of comps and make your changes. We also just recently introduced a couple new features. We have languages up here. So if you want to send it to your client in Spanish, you can simply come down here and change it to Spanish, and then it's going to convert everything over, and even the notes, everything will show up in Spanish on here, and you can send it to your client in that format. We also have currencies on here. So, you know, if you're working with a client anywhere in North America, you can still populate the data that they need in their currency. If an agent is on this chart and let's say they made a mistake and they meant to do, you know, a different year built, they can simply hit modify search and go back and do a different search. And it's that easy. They can go back and forth and everything's on there for them. Also, once they've run their charts, if they go back to my charts, all their historical charts are right here for them. So they can go back to any chart. And it's that easy to run through and redo. An example is, if this is my client at 456 Main Street, and a week from today, I want to run a new analysis because there's some new properties that hit the market, or maybe some of these closed, maybe 4 of these pending, some of those closed, I simply can go back to my chart, modify my search, update the data, and send them out a new analysis without doing any additional work. We also have some new features that we're rolling out as far as under new chart. Not only do we have the property value analysis, but we can also do an investment analysis now. So an investment analysis, if I click on this, and this is, you know, we're rolling this out this week, and just as an example, you're on a nationwide basis, you're the first agents to see this tool. So if I click on investment analysis, what it's going to do, it's going to allow me to do for my investors, and this is again, you know, short or long-term investors, you know, you can come down here and do an analysis that's going to analyze, you know, principal paydown and appreciation and rate of return. So what we're doing here is that I can either select a property that I've run previously, so I can choose any property that's in my property list, or if I just want to do a quick analysis, and I know, oh, this investor's interested in this house at 123 Main Street, and so you're simply just titling the house address. So if I begin my analysis, here this gives me the option to either run a full analysis of what I just did, select an existing chart that I have, or if I know it's a $400,000 house, I can just come type it right in here. So this is the property value. Step 1 is just entering the property value, and we give you 3 options: selecting a chart that you've already run, creating a brand new chart, or you can just enter the property value. Rental value, the same thing. If your MLS allows us to have rental data, you might have some charts selected, saved in your My Charts that are rental values. You can create a new one, or let's say you know this rental property will rent for $2,000 a month. Simply type it in right here. So step 1, property value. Step 2, rental value. Step 3 is the remaining data input to run the full analysis. So property insurance. Let's say this house, the property insurance is $1,750 a year. And the taxes, let's say it's a non-primary residence, let's say it's $4,400 a year. If I look at this analysis here, this is giving me the annual expenses to operate the house on those 2 features there. Let's say they're going to do a mortgage, and they're going to do 80% down for the mortgage. I can put the 80% right here. Closing costs, let's say they're purchasing the house and there's $3,000 in closing costs. Interest rates at 4%, and they're going to do a 30-year term. So and let's say no second mortgage for this example, but we do have that option here to put the second mortgage. So this is the minimum set of data to do this full analysis. So very simply, I'm just entering property value, rental value, property insurance, real estate taxes, and then their mortgage information. Obviously, if they're paying cash, there's no mortgage here. It still runs the analysis. Now, if you want to get really detailed, so you can do a very quick analysis, but if you want to get really detailed, here's all our assumptions down below. So we're splitting building value, land value, rate of inflation, cost of sale. These are all the assumptions. You can overwrite any of these values with your input. So if there's HOA dues involved in the neighborhood, you can simply come and type them in right here. So let's say $50 a month for HOA dues. So all of this can be entered, but is optional from the minimum requirement set of data to run the analysis, which is this information here. So once I've entered this information, I can simply come hit generate analysis. As soon as I hit generate analysis, what it's going to produce for me is producing multiple charts. So it's similar format. So now let's look at the multiple charts, and let's start with cash flow. So if I come down to cash flow, what this is showing to me is that year one, here's my expected cash flow, minus 2282. Year 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 10-year, 5-year windows, 10-year windows, or 30-year windows. So you can see if you held the property for 30 years, how your cash flow each year is changing over that time period. We also have on here tax benefit liability. So obviously part of reason for owning a rental property is you have a tax benefit or liability. So you can see the first few years it goes from being a benefit that you're getting an advantage, but then once you start cash flowing so much positive on the property without enough depreciation and other expenses, you actually becomes a tax liability, which is not a bad thing because you have a lot of cash flow, but this gives you the tax benefit liability picture. We also have principal pay down. So that mortgage that we took out, it shows you in a 5, 10, 30-year window. Here's the principal pay down every year. So this shows everything that's happening over that 30-year window. And then finally, what we have is the home value appreciation. So we're showing after year one, we're predicting the house to be $412,000 based off the home appreciation. Again, you can go out 30 years and you can show your client, well, in 30 years, if you hold this, it's a $971,000 house with the assumptions in place. So when I look at the charts, you have the 4 main factors for investing: cash flow, tax benefit liability, principal pay down, and the home value appreciation. So those 4 compromise the entire return of the investment. You can show home equity, how that grows over time. So here's years 5, 10, 30. So you can show as you're paying it down, as it's increasing in value, your home equity goes up. So those are those charts. Now the annualized rate of return, let's go to annual investment first. So annual investment first are those 4 factors that I mentioned. So you have the cash flow, the principal pay down, the home value appreciation, and finally the tax benefit or liability. So when you run this chart out, you can go 5, 10, 30 years. You can see how everything, all the variables change over time, but you can see where your net return is on all 4 of those investments. We also have the annualized rate of return. So when I look at annualized rate of return, again, 5, 10, 30, here's your annualized rate of return. So this investment, you know, if I held it 7 years, the annualized rate of return is 10.6%, but I can go analyze any year. And so this is a comprehensive analysis of this property with very limited input from the agent, but gives a good perspective, and agents can compare for their clients' properties A, B, and C. And we're just rolling this product out, so we're working on the analytics tab, a notes tab that scripts for agents, and finally the report tab. So right now, this the chart tab is fully functional within your system, and you can run any set of analysis that you want. And again, it's as simple as if you forgot to input something, you can go back here and modify input. You can make a change. You can go to the assumptions. You can say, well, what if instead of home value appreciation 3%, let's change it to 4%. So you can override any of this, generate a new analysis, and it recalculates everything for you based off of that new analysis. So you can see just changing from 3% to 4%, now that house that was $970,000, if it was 4% a year in 30 years would be $1.3 million. So you can make all those changes off the assumptions. We have a standard set of default data, but you can override any of it. So this is, you know, we are continuing to develop tools for agents. This is not a public-facing site in any way. This is specifically for agents within their MLS. I know that some on this call are currently APC users, just learning a little bit more about the tool. If you are not an APC user, feel free to go to our website, which is pricing.apcdata.net, and you can request either access to your MLS if we have it, or request us to investigate in inputting the data from your MLS. We also, for those users, or if you're on your website, we also have an intercom feature here. So the intercom feature is simply, it's feedback to us on any questions that you have. You can come here, you can write us questions, and we will respond to you through this system here, through our intercom system. And again, feel free to, you know, running analysis, if you've never run one of these before and you want to learn how to use APC, we have videos on our YouTube channel that talks about all the topics, seasonality and market conditions. But I recommend, if it's the first time you're running analysis, don't take the hardest comp that's out there. Take something in an area that you're comfortable with, that has a set of comps, learn how to use it, and you'll become a high-level user and able to explain it to your clients. But this is why we're trying to create this, is so that agents come across as the experts, with your own data. This is your data, your rights to use this data. So, and we do this webinar every 2 weeks. We do have different topics that we go over, and check back on our site of which topics we cover on a weekly basis. But we also do this general one. So, if you have questions about, if you want to watch this again in 2 weeks, I'll do a different example, and you'll learn something every time that you come join us. But just wanted to thank everybody for their time today. Again, go to pricing.apcdata.net with questions. If you're not a current user, if you are a current user and you have questions, you can certainly hit us on the intercom button here at the bottom. Thanks for everybody's time today, and look forward to see you next time.
Anton, you still there?